Thinking of investing, working, or starting a business in the cannabis industry? We've got you covered right here on Plant Problems. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, Plant Problems takes a different approach to cannabis than what you're seeing and hearing from the mainstream media. Come along with Tony and be in the know about how to invest, work, or start a cannabis business. Let's get the show started with your host, Tony Frischknecht.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Plant Problems. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've got some cool information for you guys today. It's going to be a fun one. This is personal investing on some stuff that's been working for me. And I think it's really important to share some of this stuff that, I know there's guys out there that are talking about this stock and that stock, but I'm really going to take and walk you through a great stock that's been doing really well for me since I purchased this guy. The start of it is that turned me on to looking for companies that are doing things like this is, my story. If you guys don't know, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I started when you could barely find a property that would allow growing cannabis in it. And some of you guys may not understand that, but real quick, just a little backstory here is that very few people here in Colorado back in 2009 and 10 were renting commercial space for growing. This is something that I know people are having challenges out there now, but there's also a lot of people that are involved in the industry say, well, I never had a problem. There's plenty of people to rent for. But what I've noticed is that I was able to take some of the knowledge that I learned from actually renting a commercial property, and that's how I found this stock. So, it was our first grow. We were renting a space that was 7,500 square feet. So it was much larger than a basement of even 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, right? It was quite a bit of a step up. And this is where I got to learn about triple net leases. So if you're not familiar with a triple net lease, it's taxes. Basically, you as the lessee or, the person that's leasing the building has to pay taxes, insurance, maintenance, base rent, plus the management of the property. So what you would do is you'd pay a rent throughout the entire year. So every month you pay rent. And then when it came down to a certain time period, depending on, usually it was right before tax season. So you're looking at March time, you would receive a bill from the leasing company. The leasing company would say, you owe this amount. And that's the deal. That's what you signed up for. So now all of a sudden you got to pay all these fees that normally in a residential home would be paid by the owner. Well, you as the leaseor had to pay all these additional costs. As a landlord, this is a really good thing. But as somebody that is starting a company or a business, especially in cannabis, if you didn't understand what you were signing up for, you're like, what's this $4,000 now that I have to come up with? And I'm already just trying to make it. I'm trying to pay all my bills still. And now there's this unexpected bill that you're not aware of. Of course, you work through it. Hopefully that doesn't stop you. You work through it and you learn that that's just a part of your, all your overhead. So going through this, we were able to lease a space at a pretty decent rate. And what would happen is the city would require us, anytime we had a change in our operations of some sorts where we had to get landlord approval, we had to go back to the landlord, and the landlord said, hey, all right, I'll approve this, but we got to renegotiate this deal. So each time that happened, we would have to, the landlord would charge us more money on a new lease, and at the time I got you really upset because you didn't understand why this was happening. hindsight, I would have negotiated something in the clause that would reduce that or eliminate those hikes. But you don't know that until you go through it. That's another story. I don't want to go too far into that. Anyway, so all of a sudden my lease was going up. So my overhead kept going up anytime I had to get this special permission. The landlord did very well off of this. Now, this taught me quite a bit, especially once I was able to step out of it and I started looking at different investment ideas. So this takes us to the company I'm going to share with you guys today. And this company, what they do is they purchase properties from business owners in the cannabis industry, and then they lease the property back. Of course, they lease it at a much higher rate, but what you get included in your lease when you're negotiating it is lease tenant improvements. Okay, so these guys will actually they'll buy your property back. They'll buy your property from you, market value plus. I know obviously this depends on your situation, but they'll lease it back to you, and then they'll give you tenant improvements. It could be several $1 million. So why is this so important for the business owner? Because cannabis has no traditional funding yet, right? Most of us know this. If you don't, make sure you look into it. You can't get any bank financing. Listen to a few more of my episodes. You'll be able to tell that it's just not possible yet. And these infrastructure to build out these grows are extremely expensive, in the millions. So one thing the incentive for the owner is, well, geez, you mean I can build out my infrastructure? I don't have to build as I can afford to. I can get this done now. And that promotes extremely fast growth compared to pay as you go, which most companies don't have the ability to do. Now, some of you may argue, well, that's a better way to build your business. Yes, and it can be. But the more money that starts getting into this industry, as it is daily, the harder it is to compete with those guys. So you have to figure out this advantage of growing and being able to grow faster than the other guy. Also grow smarter. This takes us to the name of the stock. So the name of this company is Innovation Industrial Properties, Inc., okay? Now, this is run by some Wall Street guys. They started this at the end of 2016. At the end of Q2, quarter two in 2020, they had nearly 20 hedge funds that were investing into this company. I actually purchased this company when they opened. They opened at $20. It dropped it was bouncing around between $15 and $20 for a few months. I picked it up at $19.66. Now, I'm not telling you this story, guys, to brag. What I'm saying is I saw this opportunity out there in front of me because I had learned what was happening here prior to purchasing the stock. I saw what these guys were doing. I didn't have the time to research them, but I knew it was going to be the next big thing. And I still don't think there's a lot of you out there that are talking about this and really catching on to this wave of leasebacks. So I purchased this stock month after it opened, and middle October, which is today, October 2020, they're sitting at one of their all-time highs of $131.25. Now, you can break this up in several different ways. What I like to say is it's gained 7 times what its value was when I purchased it. Now, there's not too many stocks out there that most investors can point at and say, I was very early on this. I understood it and I took care of it. Again, back to my advantages, I went through this, so I understood the need for it and how valuable the service that these guys provide. Another big thing that's come around that I haven't seen in hardly any, I would say next to zero, was a non-cannabis company that was involved in cannabis that was paying out dividends. They paid out dividends last month of $1.17 per share. Now, that's not very much. However, depends on how many stocks you own, right? Dividends are very new to the cannabis industry because let's face it, cannabis stocks have not made profit. Most companies have not, so they're not producing it. The big thing on this is these guys are investing hundreds of millions of dollars into these facilities, but right away they're seeing profit back on their money because of their high lease rates. Now, yes, they've got all this money invested, but they're showing profit because it's almost instantaneous, which again, they don't have to wait. These leases are coming back in and they're making money off their money right away. They've also done some deep dives on a lot of these companies. And I think last I looked, they own 63 to 67 properties throughout the U.S. So this is a multi-state operation. Of course, they're on the New York Stock Exchange. But there's not too many multi-state operations that are flourishing through the U.S. There's a couple of them. Most of them are multi-operators that have stores here, stores there, and grows everywhere, which is extremely expensive too. So I also think this is a very, very new trend because we're so early in the industry. We're in a transitional time here where the new guy is selling out to the corporate guy, and now the corporate guy is taking it. So, according to ArcView, which is one of the very earliest investment groups that has come out, in their estimate would be that cannabis is going to be a $22 billion industry by 2022. That's not that far away, right? That's not that far away at all when you start looking at the tax revenues that all these states are starting to collect. So, got all those points why it's a good stock. Now it's good now. We can talk about, sell time, stuff like that. It's all going to change. It's all going to vary with what happens with the industry. And as an intelligent investor, you need to be watching stuff like this. And when is the time to sell? But I easily see this doubling, if not quadrupling, over the next 4 to 5 years. I don't think that's too much to say. So even now, even though we're looking at $130, if you could double your money in the next 3 to 5 years, that's still a really damn good investment. And also for you guys out there that are, very tax conscientious, a long-term investment, right? So your tax rate's going to be 20%, which isn't bad. Okay, so in closing, real estate is nothing new to investors. But looking at these ideas on how cannabis has had to be creative with coming up with funds, that's where these guys fall into that niche. They have solved a problem that many owners out there are struggling with around the country. Of course, you go to places like Canada, you don't have those issues. They can actually get lending. I don't know if they're getting it right now because a lot of those guys are hurting up there. They're dealing with national issues. And so as they grow, of course, some of them are going to survive. But we're starting to see now in 2020, we're starting to see that growth in the cannabis industry that's able to handle these higher lease rates because they're actually making profit. So I've got a question for you guys. Do you see this opportunity? And I know there's other companies out here doing this, but this is the only one that I personally can recommend to you because I've seen it firsthand. Next question. Are you going to let this one pass you by too? And all of us as investors out there, we spend a lot of time going back and forth on whether this is the right investment for me or not. So I want to thank you guys for listening in today. And I hope you guys take some of this information and go do your own search. I always recommend that people don't just take it from word of my mouth, but actually go research these guys. There's a ton of information out there. There's also, if you guys aren't familiar with Form 4s, if you guys want to really go look and see what kind of investing is happening, go look up the FCC Form 4, and this is what they require. And for the new investor, you guys may not know this, but this is what they require insider guys like executives and stuff to do their trading. They have to file this form when they ever have any big investments that they do into their own company. This is something that prevents insider trading because they spell it out for the FCC. So if you go look into that, you'll see what I'm talking about, some of the executives and what they're spending on their stocks when they're buying and selling. This is a pretty big tell on what's happening inside the company that you don't see published on the quarterlies and stuff like that. So check that out. That's my last little tip. Guys, it's been a pleasure being with you guys today. And this should bring you guys some value, because from what I've been watching, it's been blowing my mind watching the growth that's happening with these guys and what they're doing. So I look forward to seeing more growth from them, and I hope you guys are able to take advantage of that too. So thanks so much for listening, and you guys have a great day out there.
You've just listened to another insightful episode of Plant Problems. If you like what you heard so far, don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues. For additional resources or to leave a review, head over to plantproblem.com. Join us again next week on Plant Problems with Tony Frischknecht. We look forward to having conversations with you as we go along this journey.